Section 410.66b of the National Electrical Code states that thermal insulation shall not be installed above a recessed luminaire or within 3 inches of the luminaire's enclosure. The primary intent behind this code section is to prevent the overheating and potential ignition of thermal insulation, which could consequently lead to a fire. Recessed luminaires, by their design, inherently generate heat during operation. If thermal insulation is installed too close to these luminaires, it can effectively absorb this heat, leading to an unsafe build-up of temperature and posing a significant fire hazard. Installing a drywall box around a recessed fixture and then laying insulation on top of this box generally does not comply with the National Electrical Code requirements. Even with the box, the insulation remains within the prohibited 3-inch zone of the luminaire's enclosure. To achieve compliance with the NEC, it is essential to maintain a minimum clearance of 3 inches between any thermal insulation and the recessed luminaire's enclosure. This requirement typically necessitates installing the luminaire within an enclosure or box that provides sufficient depth to accommodate this necessary clearance. Considering a scenario where insulation is installed on a higher floor above a recessed fixture located on a lower floor, directly applying insulation above the fixture without regard for the 3-inch clearance is a violation of the NEC. The NEC mandates the maintenance of the 3-inch clearance regardless of vertical separation if the insulation is, in effect, above the fixture. The critical consideration is preventing heat build-up around the luminaire. The NEC requirements are designed to prevent the risk of fire due to overheating. Ignoring this can have serious consequences. The code specifies that insulation must be kept at least 3 inches away from the fixture's enclosure. This isn't merely a suggestion, it's a safety regulation designed to prevent fires. When installing recessed lighting, it's important to understand how the heat generated by the fixture can affect nearby materials. Insulation, in particular, can trap heat and create a fire hazard if it's too close. The 3-inch clearance provides enough space for the heat to dissipate, reducing the risk of overheating. If you are considering using a drywall box to create a barrier between the fixture and the insulation, it's important to ensure that the box itself doesn't negate the purpose of the clearance. The box must be large enough to maintain the 3-inch space around the fixture, and it should be made of a material that can withstand the heat generated by the light. Even with a drywall box, it's crucial to avoid placing insulation directly on top of it, as this could still trap heat and create a fire hazard. Always refer to the manufacturer's instructions for the specific recessed lighting fixture you're installing. Some fixtures may have additional requirements or recommendations for insulation clearance. Ignoring these instructions can void the warranty and increase the risk of fire. Remember, the goal is to create a safer and energy-efficient lighting system. By following the NEC guidelines and the manufacturer's instructions, you can ensure that your recessed lighting is properly installed and poses no risk of fire. The requirements are there for your protection. It is better to be safe than sorry. The NEC acts as a comprehensive set of guidelines designed to ensure electrical safety. Within these guidelines, specific stipulations address the installation of recessed luminaires and their interaction with thermal insulation. The intention is to mitigate potential fire hazards arising from overheating. Luminaires, particularly recessed ones, inherently generate heat during operation. Thermal insulation, if positioned too close to these fixtures, can trap this heat, leading to a dangerous rise in temperature. Section 410.66b specifically mandates a minimum clearance of 3 inches between the luminaire's enclosure and any thermal insulation. This clearance is crucial for allowing adequate heat dissipation, preventing the insulation from reaching ignition temperatures. Installing a drywall box around a recessed luminaire and subsequently laying insulation on top of it does not automatically guarantee compliance with the NEC. While the box itself might offer some degree of separation, the key factor remains the 3-inch clearance. If the insulation is still within this zone, the installation is non-compliant. The NEC emphasizes the importance of maintaining this clearance regardless of the structural configuration. The scenario involving insulation on a higher floor above a fixture on a lower floor highlights the principle of maintaining the required clearance. Even if the insulation is not in direct contact with the fixture, if it is positioned in such a way that it impedes heat dissipation within the 3-inch zone, it violates the code. Compliance with the NEC requires a holistic approach. It's not simply about erecting a physical barrier between the fixture and the insulation. It's about ensuring that the overall installation allows for safe and effective heat management. This might involve using specialized recessed luminaires designed for direct contact with insulation, often referred to as IC-rated fixtures. These fixtures are specifically engineered to minimize heat transfer and prevent overheating. Alternatively, it might involve constructing a larger enclosure around the fixture to guarantee the required 3-inch clearance. The NEC is a living document, constantly evolving to address new technologies and installation practices. Staying informed about the latest revisions is essential for electrical contractors and homeowners alike. Local electrical inspectors play a crucial role in enforcing the NEC and ensuring that installations meet safety standards. Consulting with a qualified electrician and obtaining the necessary permits are always recommended when undertaking electrical work. The NEC prioritizes safety above all else. Adhering to its guidelines is not merely a matter of compliance, it's a matter of protecting lives and property. Careful planning, proper installation techniques, and a thorough understanding of the code are essential for creating a safe and reliable electrical system. Remember, electrical work can be dangerous. Always exercise caution and seek professional assistance when needed. The National Electrical Code, or NEC, contains specific rules and guidelines about installing recessed lighting fixtures safely. One of the key concerns is managing the heat these fixtures produce, as it can become a fire hazard if not handled correctly. Section 410.66b of the NEC directly addresses the issue of thermal insulation around recessed luminaires. It states very clearly that thermal insulation should not be installed directly above a recessed luminaire or within 3 inches of the fixture's enclosure. This is a critical safety measure intended to prevent the insulation from overheating and potentially igniting, which could lead to a fire. Recessed luminaires, by their very nature, generate a significant amount of heat when they are in operation. If thermal insulation is placed too close to the luminaire, it can trap this heat, causing the insulation to become excessively hot. Over time, this can lead to the insulation degrading or even igniting, posing a serious fire risk. A common misconception is that installing a drywall box around the recessed fixture and then placing insulation on top of the box solves the problem. However, this approach generally does not comply with the NEC requirements. The reason is that even with the drywall box, the insulation is still likely to be within that critical 3-inch zone around the luminaire's enclosure. To achieve full compliance with the NEC, you must maintain a minimum clearance of 3 inches between the thermal insulation and the luminaire's enclosure at all points. This means you might need to install the luminaire in a box or enclosure that is deep and wide enough to provide that necessary clearance on all sides. In situations where insulation is installed on a floor above a recessed fixture on a lower floor, it is crucial to remember that the 3-inch clearance rule still applies. Even though the insulation is not in direct contact with the fixture, if it is positioned in a way that could impede heat dissipation within that 3-inch zone, it would still be a violation of the code. The NEC requirements are designed to ensure that the heat generated by the luminaire can safely dissipate into the surrounding air, preventing any dangerous build-up of temperature. There are specialized recessed luminaires available in the market that are specifically designed for use in direct contact with insulation. These are often referred to as IC-rated fixtures. If you plan to install insulation close to your recessed lighting, it is highly recommended that you use IC-rated fixtures. These fixtures are engineered to minimize heat transfer and prevent overheating, even when surrounded by insulation. When installing recessed lighting, it is essential to carefully follow all of the manufacturer's instructions and the NEC guidelines. If you are unsure about any aspect of the installation, it is always best to consult with a qualified electrician. Electrical work can be dangerous, and it is always better to err on the side of caution. Remember that the NEC is a set of minimum safety standards. Local codes and regulations may have additional requirements. It is important to check with your local building department to ensure that your installation complies with all applicable codes. The goal of the NEC and other electrical codes is to protect people and property from electrical hazards. By following the code and using safe installation practices, you can help to ensure that your electrical system is safe and reliable. Always prioritize safety when working with electricity. Even seemingly minor mistakes can have serious consequences. If you are not comfortable working with electricity, it is best to leave the work to a qualified professional. The NEC mandate regarding insulation around recessed lights is clear. Thermal insulation must be kept at least 3 inches from the fixture. Drywall boxes are insufficient unless they guarantee this clearance. Insulation above a fixture on another floor still falls under this rule if it impacts heat dissipation. To fully comply, use IC-rated fixtures or build larger enclosures ensuring proper clearance. Always consult local codes and a qualified electrician for safe installation practices. Recessed lighting presents unique challenges when it comes to electrical safety. The enclosed nature of these fixtures can trap heat, creating a potential fire hazard if not properly addressed. That's why the National Electrical Code, or NEC, has specific requirements for installing recessed luminaires, particularly in relation to thermal insulation. Section 410.66b is the key section to understand. This section states, in no uncertain terms, that thermal insulation shall not be installed directly above a recessed luminaire or within 3 inches of the luminaire's enclosure. The underlying principle here is to prevent the thermal insulation from overheating and potentially igniting, which could lead to a dangerous fire. Recessed luminaires, by their design, naturally generate heat during operation. If thermal insulation is placed too close to the fixture, it can effectively trap this heat, causing the insulation to reach excessively high temperatures. This can not only degrade the insulation over time, but also create a significant fire hazard. Many people mistakenly believe that simply installing a drywall box around a recessed fixture and then laying insulation on top of the box is sufficient to meet the NEC requirements. However, this is generally not the case. The problem is that even with the drywall box in place, the insulation is still likely to be within the critical 3-inch zone surrounding the luminaire's enclosure. To truly comply with the NEC, you must ensure that there is a minimum clearance of 3 inches between the thermal insulation and the luminaire's enclosure at all points. This may require installing the luminaire in a larger box or enclosure that provides the necessary clearance on all sides. Another scenario to consider is when insulation is installed on a floor above a recessed fixture located on a lower floor. In this case, the 3-inch clearance rule still applies. Even though the insulation is not in direct contact with the fixture, if it is positioned in a way that could impede the dissipation of heat within that 3-inch zone, it would still be considered a violation of the code. The NEC requirements are designed to allow the heat generated by the luminaire to safely dissipate into the surrounding air, preventing any dangerous build-up of temperature. Fortunately, there are specialized recessed luminaires available on the market that are specifically designed for use in direct contact with insulation. These are often referred to as IC-rated fixtures. If you plan to install insulation close to your recessed lighting, it is highly recommended that you use IC-rated fixtures. These fixtures are engineered to minimize heat transfer and prevent overheating, even when surrounded by insulation. When installing recessed lighting, it is always essential to carefully follow all of the manufacturer's instructions and the NEC guidelines. If you are unsure about any aspect of the installation, it is best to consult with a qualified electrician. Electrical work can be dangerous, and it is always better to err on the side of caution. Remember, the NEC represents a set of minimum safety standards. Local codes and regulations may have additional requirements. It is important to check with your local building department to ensure that your installation complies with all applicable codes. The ultimate goal of the NEC and other electrical codes is to protect people and property from electrical hazard. By following the code and using safe installation practices, you can help ensure that your electrical system is safe and reliable. Always prioritize safety when working with electricity. Even seemingly minor mistakes can have serious consequences. If you are not comfortable working with electricity, it is best to leave the work to a qualified professional. The 3-inch rule in the NEC for recessed lighting is there for a reason. It prevents fires. Don't take chances, follow the code and stay safe.